Welcome to our latest Conversation Corners, Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, featuring speaker Caroline Ortiz. This Conversation Corner is brought to you by the American Holistic Nurses Credentialing Corporation, AHNCC. The AHNCC Equality, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Justice Committee promotes initiatives, education, and advocacy efforts that embrace our common humanity. Conversation Corners is one of those initiatives. Our guest speaker today is Caroline Ortiz. Caroline E. Ortiz, PhD, MPH, RN, NCBC, is an associate professor within the Pacific College of Health and Sciences Holistic Nursing Program and adjunct senior lecturer at the California Institute of Integral Studies Integrative Health Studies Program and a board-certified nurse coach. Caroline is a board member of the American Holistic Nurses Credentialing Corporation. She has developed holistic health programs for healthcare providers and general audiences, participated in integrative medicine research, and created a Spanish language guided meditation library for Hay House. She is active with the National Association of Hispanic Nurses New York chapter and the Integrative Health Project's work internationally. Caroline is also an apprentice and researcher in Mesoamerican curanderismo, traditional medicine and healing system. Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, October 27th through November 2nd, is a millennial-old indigenous tradition from the Americas that has been gaining popularity in the U.S. It is often associated with face-painted skulls and a party-like atmosphere, celebrating the departed souls of loved ones. However, few know about its much deeper significance rooted in a sophisticated indigenous cosmology and holistic perspective of life and death, which for many can be profoundly healing. Caroline invites you to more fully understand Dia de los Muertos beyond the face paint and connect with its magic by learning to create your own ofrenda, offering that will welcome your beloved home. Let's welcome Caroline Ortiz.
It's all yours, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Mickey. And you did a fabulous job. Curanderismo is a tricky word, so good job, you. I applaud anyone that attempts to pronounce it. So yeah, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for taking this time to come together in this space. For me, it's a real treat to have an audience for for this topic in particular. It very much is near and dear to my heart, and it is that heart that I hope comes across in these few slides and a few video clips. I too welcome questions and thoughts, so please put them in the chat and I will absolutely get to them. There is, depending on timing, and I've cut out some things so that we could have some time to come back together about midway to do some sharing, well, a little bit over midway, to do some sharing. So yeah, welcome. So as I start, and this is me, it's important for me to say to you that what I'm sharing in this presentation on Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, is really just my interpretation of an ancient, sophisticated understanding of the whole universe from this part of the globe. And in this presentation, I'll share a bit about my own story and what I've come to understand about Dia de los Muertos. And this is what I'll share with all of you, with all of my love and in honor of those who have come before me and have passed this ritual and tradition down. So being from deep South Texas, it's in the area of the Rio Grande Valley on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico and on the border with Mexico. I grew up with a very Catholic grandmother from the north central region of Mexico, an area known as San Luis Potosí. With her, I knew about Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos, from a very, very, very young age. And every year, about the first 2 days of November, I would go with my grandma Agustina to help set up her altar that she kept in her home. And on this altar, she would put pictures and candles and flowers and food, which I thought was a little weird, but food. And sometimes I would also go with her to the local cemetery of our small town. And what I would do there with her would be to help sort of clean up the grave sites of people that I knew and that had passed and people that I didn't know. And this custom is a custom that has been going on both sides of the border region for really centuries. And it is absolutely right to open such a share with a ceremony that honors the 7 directions as a way of anchoring our being in space and in time. And in their company of the 7 directions, we can open ourselves to learn a bit more about this sacred balance of life and death. And what you cannot see that's in back of you is I myself am burning the resin of copal, which is a tree resin burned in celebration and in offering to the universe, really. And I offer it also to each one of you with me and with us here today. So in your mind and to the degree of your comfort, you can join me in the following. We welcome in the east, Quetzalcoatl, where the sunlight rises anew and clarifies our path. May we live enlightened lives. We welcome the west, Xipe Totec, where the sun sets and the moon invites us inward. May we welcome change and growth with ease. We welcome the north, Tezcatlipoca, honoring our ancestors' gift of medicine in its many forms. May we enjoy balance and well-being. We welcome the south, Huitzilopochtli, and like children, knowing all is possible, may we be curious, courageous, and kind. We welcome Father Sky, Tonatiuh, the space of limitless expansion and the unity of all. May we live expanded lives. We welcome Mother Earth, Tonantzin, the nourishing ground that receives, cradles, and gives life. May we go strong roots to blossom and flourish. Excuse me. And finally, we welcome our own heart, corazón, the center of our soul self with our unique gifts. May we live in harmony, sharing our gifts, the harmony that exists also in living and in dying. Ometeo. So it's important for me to share the deeper meaning of Dia de los Muertos beyond the face paint that gives us the tradition that we have today. In the beginning, there was one unified singular all, a deity named Seotl, whose name means one life force. That single life force divided into 2. This 2 life force, named Ometeo, stands for the sacred duality in all things. This circle uses black and white to represent this universal law of duality in balance. Everyone and everything has within 2 complementing aspects, or 2 end poles of one stick. These ends are not opposites or are in competition with one another, where one end can be said to be good or positive, and the other can be said to be bad or negative. But both poles must exist if there is to be balance and order. Ometeot, this two-life force, became known as a deity couple named Ometecihuatl and Ometecutli. The words literally mean Mr. and Mrs. Two. They represented the balance of masculine essence and feminine essence, but also other poles like light and dark, hot and cold, up and down. And together, these poles gave harmony to the one life force. Indigenous cosmology tells us that the balance and harmony of the complementary poles is the nature of this world, and the two life forces, including life and death. And they must exist if this universe is to have movement and continue flowing. From colonial archives of the Mesoamerican culture in the 16th century, we get a picture of how life and death were treated. The Aztecs believed it was the job of Mictecacihuatl, and I practiced this many times, Mictecacihuatl, the lady of the dead in Mictlan, the underworld, who would watch over the bones of those who had passed. The bones were to be used to create new life in the land of the living. Once a year, she ascended to the land of the living to make sure that the bones were being cared for properly. And upon her arrival, the Aztec community would hold celebrations in her honor with dance and food and thank her for her protection. In the 16th century, there already existed Spanish Catholic custom of visiting grave sites and decorating graves with candles. It was during these festivals that families would decorate graves, bring food to the grave sites, and light the way for the dead to return to their families. With the conquest came the forced elimination of traditions and customs, whereby Aztec pagan celebrations of death literally and tragically collided with the Catholic. And it's highly likely that some of these pagan customs were not lost, but woven into Spanish ones in the New World. If the Aztec view of the afterlife was to survive, some traditions had to die and be reborn as a blend of indigenous and Western European beliefs and customs. And one result of this survival attempt has become this modern celebration of Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos. The Catholic Church celebrates 2 feast days as a time to remember those who have passed, a time for praying for the souls of the deceased, embracing death as a necessary consequence of our birth, and preparing for our own soul's eternal life. As part of their survival, indigenous death rituals and celebrations were necessarily adapted for incorporation into these Catholic feast days. But Dia de los Muertos rituals are not only observed on November 1st and 2nd. Remembrances begin actually 5 days earlier on October 27th for what is actually a 7-day ritual. It is attended as a sacred celebration, one that honors death as a necessary part of life, as a reconnection to those who have passed, and as soulful medicine for those who continue living. But before looking a little bit more closely at the culture and rituals south of the border, I want to share a perspective from the US. This 2024 article describes an American culture of denial in reference to how our society deals in general with death and dying. And it reads in part, "The way Americans grieve and mourn is deeply influenced by a cultural discomfort with mortality, a tendency to avoid the deeper emotional work that comes with loss, an emphasis on quick resolution of sorrow, and the expectation that individuals should handle their grief privately, often with the help of professional counseling rather than community support. In a society that values speed, efficiency, and individualism, Americans are encouraged to process grief quickly and quietly, with death often pushed to the margins of consciousness and mourning treated as a personal responsibility rather than a communal act. In the following video, you'll see how some of our neighbors to the south approach grief and communal mourning. And this video is from Rick Bayless, who is a Mexican traveler from the US. And this video is about 5 minutes.
Every year at the end of October in the U.S., we're all dressing up as monsters and ghouls for Halloween. But in Mexico, families are gathering together for a celebration of the deceased loved ones. A holiday that they call Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. Now, some of the costuming and skull iconography may look similar, but the comparison between these two holidays really stops there. To me, Day of the Dead seems more akin to our Thanksgiving, a time for families to get together and share some great food, all accompanied with beautiful memories and solemn reminders of departed loved ones. It's a holiday for appreciating the best things in life, both what we have and what has gone before. I spent the day with our family friend Andres Mendez. He explained to me what the traditions around Day of the Dead mean to him. We started off really early in the morning at the main cemetery in Oaxaca City, the one that they call Panteón General, to get an idea of how the families were preparing for their evening festivities. One of the first things you notice this time of year, no matter where you are in Mexico, are the flowers, especially the cempasúchil, the marigolds. Throughout the countryside, the fields are just filled with that beautiful orange color. And everywhere you look, every flower display seems more spectacular than the last. You know, the care and detail that the families put into these graveside decorations is really remarkable. It seems to me that in the United States, oftentimes when we think about coming to a cemetery, we're thinking about sort of final. But here, people come and celebrate in the cemeteries because they're celebrating life and family life and kind of what's gone on before.
That's correct.
What is all this? What are the niches?
Tonight they will actually be lighted.
Okay.
There will be a lot of candles on each niche, and it's also really interesting to come and look at them because you find a lot of famous Oaxacan people, artists,
do you really?
Politicians that are buried here. Macedonio Alcalá is a very famous musician.
He's got a street named after him, right?
That's right. Yeah.
This is really fascinating. There's a lot of activity starting on around here with people coming to clean the graves up and to put the flowers out and everything. While most every home will have a private altar inside dedicated to their loved ones, here at the Panteón, groups of people create enormous public displays, including exquisitely detailed sand paintings. It's kind of like a competition right? Like competition
Yes.
for people who can make the best sand paintings and altars. I see a whole lot of altars here.
That's
But
right.
tell me a little bit about the significance of the sand paintings, the
Yeah.
tapetes de arena.
Yeah, tapetes de arena. So, for example, after a person passes away, they would make a sand tapete de arena with the saint that the person was devoted to, and then after 9 days, they will pick it up.
The public altars are equally impressive. They generally weave together all the traditional elements, but they display them on a grand scale. And here is a beautiful, beautiful altar. Looks very traditional to me.
It
I
is
don't know
very
if it
traditional.
does.
Yeah, you have the cempasúchil,
Yes.
the yellow flowers.
Yes.
You put all the favorite food of the person that you are dedicating
Right.
this altar to.
And then, of course, there's the Day of the Dead bread,
Yeah,
the
the bread.
classic thing that goes on every altar, it seems to me.
And
Now, what about all the fruit? There's fruit, there's peanuts, there's pecans.
yeah, so it's an offering to the beloved one. So you want to have the best that's available because they are in season right now.
And always lots and lots of candles on the altar. The activity continued outside.
So that was sort of a lot of the visuals of what you see happening in the area of not just Oaxaca and the surroundings. Oaxaca, most especially, is known for their very aware and awake traditional practices as a region. But throughout different regions and communities of Mexico, these types of celebrations are still held. The funny thing that funny as in odd, that I recognized or realized fairly recently is that Mexico City has become one of now the most large and popular Day of the Dead parades and festivities. But I didn't realize that this parade really only came about, I want to say, I should have remembered, like 2013, 2016, when a James Bond movie recreated a Day of the Dead parade in the downtown area of Mexico City. Before this James Bond filming, they really didn't have large mass community celebrations such as the Day of the Dead parade in Mexico City. So I think it's fantastic that something like Hollywood helped many people come back to some of their traditions. So here we have the 5 day, or beginning the 5 days before November, where each day has a special dedication of remembrance that is signified with the lighting of a white candle. You don't need to, obviously remember these, there's no quiz. You can certainly take notes. And as Mickey said, this video is being recorded and will be available to you if you want to go back to it at some point. But on October 27th, this is the day when a candle is lit, specifically for all of those who died alone, without family, or it said without anyone to remember that they had a life. And it's also a day for remembering beloved pets. October 28th, a candle is lit for those who had an unexpected death.
Why do you need to do this, Chloe?
Sorry, I paused. I thought someone is speaking. Yeah, so those who had died an unexpected death. October 29th, another white candle is lit for those who died by drowning. I am not sure why specifically drowning, other than it is a very tragic death. October 30th, a white candle, along with bread or another food item and a glass of water, is actually put out in remembrance of those who died unidentified, and for those who died for lack of food or died without food, those who were hungry. October 31st to November 1st is actually when the altar is starting to be constructed. This altar, which we'll go into the next slides, is a special sacred space that is dedicated on this first day of October 31st to November 1st, dedicated to infants and children and the unborn, the infants and children who have passed and the unborn. And a vigil is kept overnight from October 31st to November 1st. And often some of the offerings that are placed on this altar are things like candy skulls or candies in general, and things like children's toys. At 3 p.m. on the 31st, it is customary for people to open the doors to their home or the gates to their properties and to set off fireworks. And it's said that these fireworks are a way for the deceased to remember to come back and to be drawn by the sound to their own homes. The altar continues on November 2nd, but the focus of the altar changes on this day. And this now becomes an altar dedicated to all ancestors of the family or the home group, and to deceased adults. And some of the offerings that are placed on these altars will also go over in subsequent slides. And November 3rd is the final day when there is a bidding of farewell to all of those souls and loved ones who came back to the home or came back to the community and came to visit for these days. And it is celebrated with a final candle. And by the end of November 3rd, all of the altars and decorations and things that have been placed in honor of the deceased are taken down. So here I'll talk a little bit about the different types of altars that can be constructed. These altars can have different levels, and those different levels have different significances, but they almost all have some form of arch or the colorful flags up on top. And those are to signify the portal through which our loved ones can come in. So an altar that has one level, that level is said to signify earth, and is sort of the middle plane, the middle world, the area where humans exist. Those altars that have two levels signify the earth and the sky. So the addition of the sky is inviting in representations of the Great Spirit or of God or the cosmos, in addition to the earth. If there are three levels in the altar, this is the addition of a level for the underworld to the earth and the sky. And this underworld is certainly not what some people may jump to as saying hell, but it is a place of living in a different way called Mictlan. And it is a place where the dead go after this life on earth. There are also altars of 7 levels, and those are signifying of the 7 directions, very, very similar to the 7 directions that we had in our opening ceremony. And then there are also 13 levels of altars. And in these altars with 13 levels, those represent the 13 skies, or the 13 dimensions of our spiritual existence, according to these ancient traditions. All of these numbers are significant in indigenous cosmology. And not only the Mesoamerican one, but these numbers are actually very significant in cosmologies of many ancient cultures around the world, which I kind of find very comforting in some way. So what can go on these altars? These altars are usually very colorful, very festive, and they include elements, the 4 elements and the 4 directions. They can include things such as flowers, candles, water, a glass of water, for example, salt, fruits, seeds, and nuts, copal, or another type of incense like frankincense, and papel picado. Papel picado are those colorful flags that you see in this image, and that you may have seen in other of the images here. And you see, I've also added sort of what elements are represented with each of these items. They are very significant. But also, these altars can have additional items, such as photographs of the people that have passed, religious objects, either religious objects that belong to those that have passed or that are very much a part of the living family. There can also be toys, keepsakes, or other personal items that are very specific or were enjoyed or valued by the people that have passed, for whom the altar is dedicated. There's also things like food and drink, what foods and drinks that the deceased enjoyed when they were living. There also are sugar skulls that add sort of what you might call the sweetness of life to the altar. And other traditional breads. The one that you see, if you can see in the foreground of this image, is actually one that is a sweet bread, and the sort of the rows that you see on top in the form of a cross are actually crossbones. But these altars are certainly, can certainly be made of whatever is calling to someone, whatever someone feels would be enjoyed or welcomed in honor of the person or people for whom this altar is dedicated. So these are just some ideas, but should you be inspired to create your own altar at some point, please don't feel limited or that it has to have all of these or some of these. Make it your own and make it something truly significant for you, your family, and for the people that you are welcoming. So how might you maintain the altar? You want to keep the space clean and neat. You certainly, if you have live candles, want to be sure that the area is safe. Anything that is edible, you want to be sure to refresh. You can replace the water daily and the candles as they go out. Certainly, you're invited to incorporate this altar into your daily living. Have it not become just kind of a side table or a piece of furniture that you kind of put together, but then you seem to forget about. Many people will have meals around the altar or incorporating the altar as part of the dining table. This space, while festive and it is meant to be a celebration, is certainly honored in a very solemn way. You can also share your altar with family and friends and neighbors, inviting others to bring keepsakes or photos of their beloved onto your altar as well. In this way, it becomes more of a community. And again, as I say, you can certainly create your own traditions around the altar and around this ritual. Then there is the farewell on November 3rd. At that time, you light the final candle to really close the celebration. You may speak a few words out loud to those that are bidding their farewell, perhaps even inviting them to return the following year. And you do take down the altar completely on that day, on November 3rd. The food and flowers or anything perishable, you can bury, ideally, or you can put them in the compost. You do not consume them, because the idea being that they have already been consumed. So what is left has no soul and remaining, because that was what you offered to the people coming to visit. The water that you may have had on your altar or liquids, you can offer to the tree or to a garden. And then you return the space to what it was prior, cleanly and neatly. And then finally, you put out the final candle. So this image here is going to bring us to a little bit more of a focus on sort of the communal celebrations of Dia de los Muertos. And what you see here in this image is the entrance to one of the cities in a Oaxacan community. And who you see entering are just really hordes of family and friends and coming to spend the night and keep vigil at the grave sites of their beloved. So here in this clip, it's about 5 minutes, and this comes from the series The Reluctant Traveler with Eugene Levy. And this most recent series, Series 3, the first episode of this series, is really focused on Day of the Dead in Oaxaca. So let me see if I can get it to...
Dia de Muertos, we'll set up an altar, and we essential part. Well, so
There we go.
I was playing the flute for my mom when she was really ill, and she got the news that her illness was terminal, and just the music just helped us process what we didn't say with words.
I lost my own mother to cancer almost 40 years ago, so I do know what this family is going through. There was just a lot of emotion running through it. You know, for him and for me, I think for everyone. You know, it's never easy. It's a beautiful ceremony, and it's definitely the kind of the flip side of the Day of the Dead parade. This definitely kind of puts an underbelly on it that makes a little more sense to me. It's going to be a tough year.
Yeah, without her here, it's time for us to step up.
Yes.
Make her
Yes.
proud.
I think your mom would be very proud. You feel a presence here right
I'm
now?
feeling joyful right now. I'm feeling very happy, content. My heart is full.
Everybody hopes you're going to be remembered. I hope there's a smile on people's faces, you know, when they remember me. And yes, I hope there's a lot of crying. I hope there's a lot of crying. You know, just for the first day. And then you can just break out the mezcal.
For this family, preparing their loved one's favorite food and leaving some as an offering
You place Syria right there.
is meant to nourish that person's soul and bring back happy memories.
I now understand why it's a celebration, which is celebrating the moving on from this world to another realm.
Yeah.
And that is reason to be happy. It's a wonderful thing to know the spirits are returning, right?
After the meal, the spirits of the deceased will return to the underworld. So we'll follow them back to the cemetery to give them a proper send-off. Until next year.
Oh, my. Look at the flowers.
It looks like the whole village is here.
Oh, my God, this is something.
Families have lovingly decorated each grave and plan to spend all night here paying their respects and partying.
This is it. This is my mother's grave. There's a yearly ritual that we do here. I think they're here.
Oh, my.
The mariachi bands. So when the song starts, I'm gonna offer a little mezcal blessing to my mother's tomb.
Well, it's not the kind of thing I would expect at a cemetery to kind of you get to a point where you can, celebrate with a party and with laughter and with, drinking and with music. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it takes the sting off grief.
And we make a cross. Now this is for the living. To show. If you're thinking of your own people, of someone special, dear to your heart, we have a community chapel here where if you want to send a little prayer, a little thoughts, or an offering.
I'd be honored to do that, Samuel.
Yeah.
I'd be honored.
Yeah.
When I first got here, I thought Day of the Dead was not much more than lighthearted fun.
I light a candle for my mother and father and all my deceased family members.
But now I realize how meaningful it is. It keeps people connected to their roots, easing their fear of death. To me, this may be a festival of the dead, but really it's all about celebrating life.
I can see why it's on people's bucket list, but I think tourists actually don't quite understand what Day of the Dead is all about. They're really into the festivities of it. But the underlying richness, I guess, of that holiday comes from what people are actually doing as a family at home. It's based around a celebration. And I'm really happy for Samuel and his family, and I think it's a wonderful thing. And it was wonderful to experience. It was pretty special.
Dia de Muertos.
So I invite anyone wanting to partake in these types of traditional celebrations this year to do so. But I also want to acknowledge that sometimes it's just not the right time for you yet. And that's absolutely fine. So I perhaps encourage you to ask yourself, are you ready for this kind of remembrance? If the answer is no, beautiful, honoring that. And if the answer is maybe yes, fantastic. And who would you welcome home? Who might become the center or the focus of your altars? And perhaps What items would entice your beloved home? What keepsakes? What foods? What drink? What photo would they want, would they want you to place on an altar? What flowers, perhaps even music, can be placed on an altar that is dedicated to your beloved? And I'll invite you in the chat, if you are so willing. I'll ask this: what items would entice you home? Should your loved ones create an altar for you someday? What things might you want them to place on an altar that is dedicated for you? What foods? What drink? What music? What keepsakes? What toys? I'm going to pause here so that I can see the chat if there are any. Chocolate. Absolutely. I think for mine would be mole, which is it's a traditional, well, there's many different variations of it, but it's a traditional sauce, usually made with chicken, chocolate, nuts. You had me at the chocolate of it, and about, depending on who makes it, like 8 to 12 different kinds of chilies. Nuts of all kinds. Fantastic. Books, pictures of my dogs and family. Sweets, chocolate, country music, and daisy flowers. Mangos. Yes, yes. And I think there's something to be said for having these moments where you are thought of as coming back together again at the right time for you and for your family. These opportunities that you're not gone completely, that there are these moments when you can come back together. Lavender, beans, rice, pozole. Oh, pozole. Angelina, red or white, red or green pozole? Big question. Crystals, wedding picture, dog things. Good small batch. Oh, I like that, Jamie. Good small batch whiskey. Dog pick. Oh, of all the beautiful. A spool of thread. Huh. That's very simple and beautiful in its simplicity. Thank you. Red, me too, Angelina. Wine. Oh yes, bring the barrel. Thank you. All right, let me get back to the show. So as we sort of come to the next and sort of last section of this, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the imagery and some of the imagery and some of the things that we see around Day of the Dead, because there is some really interesting background information that I wanted to share. Many believe that these skeleton images that you see everywhere around Day of the Dead have just always been a part of these celebrations, and maybe even kind of coming from ancient times as the Aztec Lady of the Dead. But actually, the popularity of these skeletons is quite recent. These images are attributed to a man named Jose Guadalupe Posada, who was a Mexican graphic artist. He was also a political commentator of his day. And here you see in the middle, the female skeleton named La Catrina. And she's usually depicted in sort of these fine clothing, very ornate. And on the right, you see a very similar male skeleton, and his name is Catrin. And he also was often depicted with suits and top hats and cigars and riding bicycles, which at the time. And these images were actually not, as I said, not part of the history of Dia de los Muertos, but they were actually intended to make fun of the Mexicans of those days, of that time, the early 20th century, who dressed in sort of what you might call haute couture from Europe and wore makeup that actually lightened their skin, and who rode bicycles instead of horses or donkeys. And Posada, he saw these people as wanting to be sort of a class above the common folk of his community. And so he wanted to make fun of them. And he saw these people as almost denying their indigeneity, denying their indigenous heritage. Posada believed that death was everyone's end, very democratic. And so when the time comes that we die, no matter what your class was in life or what your social status was, we all wind up as skeletons. So he sort of created these figures, these designs, in a cartoonish, satirizing way. And today, the Catrina, the Catrin, and these skeletons are images of death, but generally more in a lighthearted way. But they have certainly become integral to the art and the cultural celebration of Dia de los Muertos. I saw very quickly someone mentioned Coco in one of the comments. Well, this film, this animated film, Coco by Disney, came out in 2013. And a bit about the story behind this film was that its original name was going to be Dia de los Muertos, or something that had the phrase Dia de los Muertos in it before it was actually Coco. And Disney sought actually to get a trademark for Dia de los Muertos. They wanted to secure the rights to brand the commercial products with Dia de los Muertos for their movie. Well, there was such a backlash that people began online petitions and this sort of outcry on social media, claiming that Disney was appropriating and misappropriating the culture and exploiting the culture and traditions of Mexico and the communities. And very quickly, Disney actually withdrew their application to trademark Dia de los Muertos, and the title of the film was actually changed to Coco. And here is another really beautiful, although lesser known, animated movie that I would recommend, that also is centered around Day of the Dead, called The Book of Life. So with this image, I took this in 2023 when I was actually celebrating my birthday, which happens to be on November 2nd. I was celebrating my birthday with beautiful family and friends in Oaxaca City, Mexico. And I was one of those thousands and throngs of people that was going into the local cemeteries, not to visit a gravesite, but to watch families and take pictures and take in the celebration as purely as a spectator. However discreet and respectful that I thought I was being, I also acknowledge that I have conflicting feelings about my own actions at that time, and having now these images to share with you. And I guess all I can only say is that I would really like to be part of this lineage that does participate in this tradition and that passes it along respectfully, honoring the sacrifices of the many who very literally died to keep it alive over centuries, if not millennia. And that I am very happy and very honored to also keep this ritual celebration alive and being a part of that, so that I might be sharing it with you here now. I do want to acknowledge those teachers of mine that first taught me and continue to teach me about my own heritage and my own culture and tradition, not just Dia de los Muertos, but certainly including it. And first and foremost is my grandma Agustina from Los Fresnos, and my teachers of curanderismo, Bob Vetter, Maestro Laurencio Lopez Núñez, and Maestra Grace Alvarez Sesma. And here I share another photo of myself dressed for ceremony and ritual. This is also me. Often what the pictures that I have and that you may have seen, certainly in the promo for this, is a very different kind of photo of myself, a different headshot for sure. But I want to also make sure to introduce you to another part of me and my life, and what has really become my passion, what started out as my doctoral dissertation, but unbeknownst to me was really just a way of that dissertation was really just a way of coming back to myself and to reconnect with my family and myself in much, much deeper ways than any dissertation could have ever done. And here is a photo of my very cute, tiny, simple altar, the very first one that I ever put together, which was somewhat recent. It was in 2019. And I like to say that a very savvy realtor would probably list this on Zillow as charming and cozy with views of a tree-lined New York City street. So with that, I will stop my share, and I thank you so much, and I welcome your comments and questions about, perhaps anything that may have crossed your mind or that you may have thought of, and I'm happy to comment or offer whatever I can.
Caroline, I enjoyed that presentation as much or maybe more than the one I saw last year. I love the traditions of honoring those who've passed. To me, it's the bridge is very hopeful and positive. And I loved your picture of how Americans tend to deal with death. So, Susan, I see your hand is up.
Hi, good evening. Thank you.
You're welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much, Caroline. That was such a beautiful presentation of your history and your heart. I'm really blown away. I'm a oncology nurse navigator, but my specialty is palliative and hospice care and death work. And so I was very excited to see, to participate, to see your presentation. I'm very drawn to this work and the different cultural aspects. And, your presentation just showed such a rich fabric of history and, celebration. So a lot of the things that you presented really resonated with me. I have a question. I recently have done some reading by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who I feel like you might be familiar with.
Yeah.
And a lot of similar themes that I thought were just so interesting. And I just was curious about like your thoughts or your opinions on her writing and her representation of of your your lived history.
I know that she's extremely popular, uh, and has such beautiful poetic writing, so much imagery in her work. I can't say that I've read her work extensively,
Okay.
but yeah, she has a beautiful way of conveying so much of the imagery and the symbolism and the not cosmology, what are the right words? Just so much imagery that captures the tries to capture the depth of the sophistication of this community in general, kind of the Mesoamerican Mexican communities. Yeah.
That's I've learned about that's where I first came across the word curandera. Pardon my pronunciation.
No,
I can
not
only
at all.
try. But I thought that was so interesting. And then also she talks about the fable of La Loba, which is like like a maybe a version of like the bone catcher, the bone keeper sort of. And I just thought that really resonated. So just very interesting. There's also part of my personal history and ancestry is Irish, and one of the pagan kind of cross calendar days is Samhain, which is essentially the Irish version of Day of the Dead. That has a lot of very interesting similarities. I call myself like a neo-pagan Catholic, if there's such a thing. So I kind of really
There is
identify
with you, so yes, it exists.
Sure. So I really identify with that as a part of kind of like a first people indigenous culture where the Catholic Church kind of borrowed and built upon a lot of those traditions. So I thought that was just so interesting. And there's a lot of similarities of thin veil and kind of a liminal time in the calendar of the year and the spinning of the year. So I thought that was interesting that it is quite a lot of the themes are cross-cultural.
Yeah, last year when we had this presentation, we had a lot of beautiful discussion about similarities across cultures, having to do with that thin veil, the coming back together, the celebration, really among many cultures across the globe, and that actually led to other conversations. But it is so rich, so rich. So using Susan's comments as a jumping off, if y'all are being called to find out about your own heritage, your own lineage, your own background, and those similar practices of that liminal space, or coming back together with those who have passed, I highly encourage you to explore that further for yourselves.
Caroline, there's a question from Tara that says, are the candles to remain lit throughout the week? And she was here last year as well.
And Tara, before I answer your question, hello, my friend. So good to see you. Even your name on here. Great.
Oh, yes. It's good to see you too, Caroline. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. Usually people will keep the candles lit as they are turned on, but the altar, and again, these are not hard and fast rules. I mean, depending on who you ask, some may be very sticklers. I certainly am not. Many do keep the candles on throughout the week until November 3rd, where everything does come down.
Carolyn, I have a question about appropriation and whether or not there is a perception if when you invited us to think about creating our own altars and honoring our ancestors, is there concern or perceptions of misappropriation of having an altar or honoring those if you're not of Mexican or Hispanic background?
I'm going to say absolutely yes for some people, and absolutely no for others. I think one of my curanderismo teachers, I'll tell this quick story. She was, because she died last year, she was this walking Wikipedia of plants and botanicals used as in medicine. And she was asked a similar question from a student who was quite upset that this curandera was teaching her healing practices and about the plant medicine to people who were not of Mexican background or Hispanic. And her response was so honest. She looked at this person and she says, I have children and none of them are interested in what I have to teach them. And this medicine cannot die with me. So I will teach anyone that comes to want to learn from me in a heart-filled way, because this medicine is not mine. It does not belong to me. It doesn't belong to you. It is medicine that belongs to Mother Nature and Mother Earth, and she is the one that is gifting it to all of us. And when it rains, it doesn't just rain on one person, it rains on all of us. And so I really loved her response of, she is not the gatekeeper of this medicine. And this ritual, these traditions are medicine in another form. And so, yeah, you may find people that have a comment or something to say about it. Okay, people have a comment and something to say about all sorts of things. And I, in my opinion, as humble as it is, so long as it is for your healing, beautiful, because your healing, Mickey, is my healing as well. So, Jim, yes.
You're muted, Jim.
I know. So I want to pick up on what Susan and what you just said, Carolyn, that so many of us have been away from our cultural backgrounds in terms of our relationship with the earth and with Mother Earth. There are so many traditions that have this type of ceremony during this time of the year, during this dark time of the year, as we move toward the dark, as we move toward Samhain and we move toward Yule and the end of the year, as the days get shorter. It teaches us that in so many places in the world, and Carolyn, you and I have had this conversation, that there are so many places in the world that have similar types of rituals to thank those that have gone before us for their teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, I wanna invite everybody who was not able to, and I think it was this last spring, attend the panel about spring celebrations And it was really wonderful. It's recorded, and it is the perspectives of welcoming the spring from 3 different cultural backgrounds. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. I had a question about, I guess, like quality of relationship with the person who's passed, and um, is it the expectation culturally to honor and invite back all ancestors, or is there distinction or nuance for, I don't know what's the right word, an outcast, or something where the relationship wasn't um healthy?
I really receive your question so deeply, because it is true. We have challenging connections to people, and it may be like, I don't want that person to come back. And sort of what comes to me in response is healing for yourself, as sort of the person here at this presentation, and learning about, this ritual, healing of yourself in however that can come authentically for you, or for anyone. Not just talking to you, Sarah, but anybody. No, the expectation is not to invite someone who you do not want to come back. No, absolutely. But it might be an invitation for some healing to be done, individually. Yes.
Yeah.
And should that at some point grow into, yeah, I'll invite you back, but we're here to chat. Like, I need to talk. I have some things to say to you. Yes.
Yeah.
And that actually does also happen as part of the as a part of the altar space, it being a sacred space, for things such as that, for sort of these healing conversations, if you will, to have.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that really sweet, thoughtful answer. It's always, even in a culture I'm familiar with, my own, like there's so much that's taboo, like especially around grief. So I was just curious how it might be looked at in other ways. Oh, thank you for that.
No, of course. And it's a really beautiful question, because it's true. We have challenging relationships with people, and they die, and then what? Like, what are we left with then?
Caroline, do the curanderos work with grief resolution with people who have had family pass on that they didn't get to have that final conversation with? I see a yes.
Very much so. That
I
is I can't say that that's a lot of their work, but it's these idea of unresolved healing and relationships that have been very conflictive, because many people go to curanderos, curanderas for a different problem, that in the coming together and in the talks and in the what they call a plática, which is a heart-to-heart talk, and in the exploration of what really is going on here. Like, you came to me for, rough relationship, or for addiction, or for, for this or that. But when many times when you get down to it, it is, these very conflictive relationships with other people. And often when these people pass, it sort of leaves the living person like, well, hell, now what? Now what? So yes, absolutely. And
You
there's
know,
some really beautiful rituals that go along with that many healers use for precisely that kind of healing.
I know Grace talked about some of that, some of those rituals in one of her presentations.
Mm.
Um, uh, but she also talked about, which we probably all buy into here and know, that usually the symptoms are treated versus the root cause or the root problem.
Mm.
And she talked about treating the root problem. Um, so, are there any other questions or comments? Um, I don't know if you're following chat. Um, Sharon says she
I
would be
am.
interested in a
Yeah.
longer conversation about your training as a curandero.
I
And
am super open to anyone who's willing to listen to me talk about this. I'm gonna put my email in the chat just so that y'all have it handy.
there's another conversation corner, Caroline. I'm sure that many of us are very interested in that, because I think one of the things I can say about holistic nurses is we are open to understanding that there is so much we don't know when we talk about unknowing, and being open to embracing that knowledge and different ways of understanding and approaching life challenges, and whether it's relationships or it's work limitations or whatever. So think about whether you want to come back. I'm not saying don't talk to anybody else. I'm just saying I think that would be a great conversation corner. Certainly I would be interested in hearing it, and I'm seeing people nod.
I think anything that is more helping us move toward this place of balance and harmony um, is what we need. I mean, especially right now. I mean, we always need it, but especially right now. Um, and one of the yes, this certainly can come. I don't want to I don't want to overstep or kind of seem like I'm selling something, because I really am not. But I know me and my projects and my colleague Christine Gilchrist, we are putting together projects for immersion in specifically Mexico. That is about kind of bringing us together into the traditions, into the culture, into the medicine, in experiential ways. So and so many people are wanting are doing this in their own traditions as well, and I think it's beautiful. One of the things that I learned early on was in Nahuatl, which is one of the many indigenous languages of Mexico. There is no word for disease or illness. The word that was used was held within the concept of disharmony or imbalance. And I thought, what a beautiful world when we could see one another as perhaps just a little off balance or needing a little more harmonization. In the power of language and the concept of that, I thought was just so beautiful.
It's hopeful,
Mm.
because all of us are out of balance at times, and all of us can use the love and the support that brings us back into balance. And I think that's a very positive, hopeful perspective. Um, I want to comment to Gina. I put it in the chat that if you go to our website, which is AHNCC.org, and you look at the navigator bar at the top, there's resources. And if you scroll down, there's a video library. And we literally have several hundred, but there's a section that's just conversation corners. And you are welcome to go in and listen to any one that you want, or listen multiple times. We invite you to do so, and we invite you to invite your colleagues or people you're working with who might be interested to access them, because the more we learn about each other, the more we find that we have more commonalities and differences.
And for those, for all of you that attended and those that have put such generous and kind words for me in particular in this chat, truly the love and the privilege is absolutely mine. Because for so long, this medicine and talking about this sort of thing, I was very embarrassed by it. Because it came from people that I thought were ignorant and were just poor, and that's why they did what they did at home, including my grandmother. And it was because they were poor, they didn't know real medicine, and they were just very superstitious ladies in the neighborhood. But oh my God, what an absolute idiot and ignorant person I was. And, one of my students, when I told her that, this story and that now this is really my passion, she basically says, "So, Professor, what you're saying is this is your apology tour to your grandmother." And I'm like, "Yes, actually, it is my apology tour to my grandmother and all those, all those people that have kept this medicine alive." Yeah.
You've grown in your wisdom. I think I think when we're young, we don't know, we don't have a clue what we don't know. And we are busy either trying to prove ourselves or get our jobs or get family. And then you get older and you sit back and you start to reflect and you think, as I remember, I think Tom Sawyer said, you didn't know anything. Your parents knew nothing at 20, and then you start getting older, and it's probably not Tom Sawyer, but it's a famous quote. And I think that all of us have been there. This was a wonderful presentation, Caroline. And I'm glad that you're able to see how much it was loved and enjoyed and taken to heart through the chats. Before we close, you will be getting a certificate. For 1.5 continuing competency hours, and it'll come in probably in the next 24 to 48 hours. But I want to ask if there's anything else anybody else wants to share before we say good night. Bonnie?
I'm so moved by the beauty of the creativity and the colors and that whole aspect of it. And I think that essence of creativity is a part of all of us, but in so many ways it's suppressed. It's, you really shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. And to be in a situation where your creativity is encouraged, and it's not like a rule, you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. The part of it that I just love is that these patterns and these images and all this, it's universal. It's a part of a deep presence within our, within our energy. And we think about all of the ways that gets suppressed or rejected, or rather than being celebrated because you're supposed to be doing this. And, it's just, I find that so, just so inspiring. And I love the universality of all of these kinds of amazing images and music and movement. I mean, movement and different kinds of dance and all of that are all part of the essence of the qualities of the soul and the higher self. So I just loved the imagery. It was just gorgeous.
Thank you, Bonnie, for sure.
Does anybody else have? I see Tara with gratitude, Carolyn, and everyone that shared this space tonight. The best of my day. It's really nice to hear that. Thank you. I appreciate the gift that Caroline and all our, I don't want to say presenters because people speak from the heart, and some people have PowerPoints and some people just speak, but it's always a gift. And so I say good night to all of you. If there isn't anything anybody else needs to share, thank you for coming. This is our last conversation corner of the year, but we will be starting up in January or February. Probably February. We try not to start. People are kind of shell shocked from the holidays. Even good things are tiring. And if there's something you want to talk about or you want to share with each other or with people, please let us know. You can email me directly. You can email one of the other people at AHNCC. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you, Christine, for your comment too, and good night, everyone.
Good night.
Caroline, if you'll stay a moment.
I will.